Hello, everyone. Eric Watson here, freelance writer, player of games, writer of words, recorder of videos, and tabletop role-playing aficionado. Welcome to my weekly behind-the-scenes DM-only live stream, Crafting Annihilation, which I build, write, and prepare for our next session of Tomb of Annihilation. If you're playing characters Mannix, Celeste, Gillian, George, or Theron, go away. You're not wanted here, but for the rest of you, welcome. We stream our Tomb of Annihilation sessions live on YouTube every Friday evening. You can watch all our D&D live series as well as reviews and Let's Plays on my YouTube page and read weekly session recaps at roguewatson.com. You can follow me on Twitter at roguewatson. You can join our official Discord discussion group. The invite links in the description below. If you'd like to support the channel, please check out patreon.com/roguewatson. Shoutouts to platinum patrons Andrew, Richard, Joe, Will, Tiny Dancer, Nick, Andy, Grayson, and Chris. And gold patrons RPG Papercrafts, Charming Grenade, Pretty Boy Numa, Marcos, Dave, Vicente, Gilberto, Sean, AK, Cert 2B, Adam, Dead Lizard Lounge, Sam, Rosh, and Olympus Buds. Thank you all very much for your support. For our campaign, we use Roll20.net for streaming. I use open broadcaster software with Streamlabs. Hope everyone's having a good Thursday so far. I had to kind of experiment with last week's session because we had a split party, and part of the party was I had already done their half of the events. So it was a very odd, and I talked about this a lot last week, so I don't want to get too far into it, but essentially half the party, or not half, Mannix and Celeste had experienced the ritual of the Night Serpent to transform Mannix into a UNT, and that was supposed to take the course over several hours. And I didn't quite do the meanwhile back and forth as much as I should have. Instead, I got through all of the ritual, and then the other team who was wanting to explore the dungeon didn't get very far. So instead, with last week's session, we basically centered almost totally on that half of the group. So I was very cognizant about, and I think the other half was too, about eyes on the prize, not wanting to spend too much time, knowing that, two of the party members were basically just kind of waiting for this half to catch up. So that probably affected some of their decisions in terms of where they were going to go and what they were going to do. And I did spell it out that the underground river should lead to the throne room and all that. My solution for those two players was to have Celeste control Zendala, who was an NPC with the party, which was a pretty easy solution because she'd been doing that thus far anyway. And Mannix had to control that poor 10-year-old slave boy, Cody, who is actually in the book, and who George had taken a liking to, just to give him something to do during combat, because unfortunately this half of the party had a lot of combat to do, and obviously combat always takes a lot of time in D&D. So I'm interested to know what all of your thoughts were in terms of how that worked out, giving players, instead of trying to go back and forth, back in time and doing more about the ritual, instead just kind of ignoring that ritual and say, hey, we focused on that last session, now let's focus on this half of the group. And then, but I don't want to obviously just not have those players do anything or give them a week off or anything. That's dumb. We all want to play D&D together. So I had them control NPCs. So I'm interested to hear what your thoughts were, especially obviously in the post-mortem discussion, now that we know how it went. I feel like it did pretty well. The whole hey, you can control these NPCs was a decent solution for that. So we had the battle with the Brood Guards, which, funny enough, Theron made the same mistake that George did before. And George was actually smartly hey, the last time I tried to social encounter these guys, it didn't work at all. They just attacked and I was forced to kill one. And Theron was like, no, let's still try to socialize, because, Theron is probably the moral center of the group when he speaks up about it. And unfortunately, sure enough, he walked up and they immediately attacked, because oddly enough, in this dungeon, you can kind of socially talk your way out of encounters with the higher ups, possibly. The slave master thing was a unique one because he was kind of adult to begin with, so I kind of let them do that. But the Brood Guards, it specifically says they get agitated and aggressive around anything that's not UNT. So even though they're not complete beasts, they can converse. They're really not interested. If you are like Celeste, where you're disguised as UNT, or Mannix, where you are UNT, then yes, they will socialize with you. But if you're just a fucking dwarf, with all your shit on you, walking up to them, wanting to chat, that's going to be an immediate roll for initiative. So that was a straight up combat encounter. And I did enjoy that Theron was like, well, I guess I'm going to follow George's lead from now on, because I'm sure that won't go badly from now on. So it was a fight. Theron transformed into his Allosaurus form and basically was able to tank the entire group, which was funny because everybody had to scatter. I am realizing that it's a bummer that we can't take advantage of the advanced fog of war, because I think that would have actually solved a lot of the lighting problems we had. And I try, whenever the players talk about dynamic lighting issues, I try to use that Control L. You can see that during the stream, so I can see what they see. And sure enough, Gillian especially was having a hard time as somebody who doesn't have dark vision, which obviously is very pronounced in Roll20, where we follow those rules. Couldn't literally see anything without once George left. So he like lit up his light and then was able to walk along, which I realized. I think I let her just do that as a free action, even though light technically takes an action, because I've always let the others use their Wookanut items, which are like glow sticks, as a free action. So it seems really dumb to not let somebody just cast the light spell as a free action at that point. Like, it's fucking light. Like, does that really need to cost an action? So, in fact, I assume it costs an action. I was actually even sure of that. So I wasn't even going to argue with that. That's definitely going to be probably a free action in our campaigns, just because, yeah, it costs an action. That's dumb. Especially because we generally do the use item thing to an extent. Like, people can drink a health potion for free. I think if you do more than like one thing, then that starts taking an action. But yeah, generally I let people like light up some kind of light source as a free move. So I would just let her do light as a free move. But if we had used the advanced dynamic lighting, the cool thing is, if you've ever seen it in Roll20, it essentially works like a video game fog of war, where you can still see the outline. Assuming you had seen it once before, which would have been the case with George, you could have still seen this literal area. It just would have been grayed out, so you wouldn't be able to see any tokens, I believe. So, but the problem is, every time we use advanced fog of war, it like tanks the frame rate and makes everything real laggy and shitty, especially on these bigger maps. So we've always turned that off, because obviously with everything I've got going on, multiple webcams and screen capture, I can't afford to lose any kind of like lagging or frame rate issues, which you recall sessions and sessions ago, I had some real issue with that because I had a lot of windows open on the screen when I wasn't doing the pop out thing. And same thing there, where it just like slows down the action and everybody's waiting on me to like, make rolls and do hit points and all that. So it can be annoying, and dark vision is obviously a huge deal. And one of those strict rules we actually do follow, which Mannix now has dark vision. So I believe it's only Gillian and George that don't have dark vision at this point. So the fight was pretty easy. 4 brood guards is no match, even for a split party. Especially with Theron being able to wild shape and turn into an Allosaurus. They were, they took out his entire Allosaurus hit points, but he's essentially gets a 50 hit point temporary shield on top of that. Druids are fucking awesome in 5e, by the way. The wild shaping druids are amazing just for that reason. You get literally just free, huge bulk of hit points. Even if your armor class sucks, like, you can tank like no tomorrow, especially against enemies that aren't the most intelligent about like, all right, we're just going to avoid this wild shape thing, which a lot of the enemies they've been fighting are not intelligent. So I did think it was very funny that George leapt in a boat and started rowing away, because everybody tried to get away from the Theransaurus, because that is a thing. But what's happened more often than not, he does get enraged pretty easily, and there is no future save for it, is that the other side of the rule, if he is knocked out of his wild shape form, that also cures his enrage effect. So that's typically what has been happening, is that while he's enraged, he usually ends up losing that enragedness because his wild shape goes down in that fight. Other than that, I don't think I did a whole lot of damage there. So they jumped in the rowboat. I think I made a mistake, and it does come back on a short rest, which is nuts. And I believe you can short rest while wild shaped. So you could like bank one essentially, which is pretty cool. I forgot to point out this exit. I don't know if anybody even noticed it. But this was an exit the players can take, and probably the easier way for them to escape this whole dungeon, assuming Gillian doesn't use like Dimension Door or something. So that was my bad as a DM. There was just a lot going on here. I forgot to point out that there is another exit here. I'll need to remember to, I guess, somehow remind them like, hey, you saw like a breeze coming through, or, some bullshit reason. Or obviously Cody might be able to know that there is a path that people can take in and out near that bank of the river, where if they go fast enough, nobody will really be the wiser. Although they did short rest after this fight, and after the Hydra fight, but that just synced it up with the ritual ending. So it'll be really interesting time-wise if they rest any time between basically now and when they escape. Then I might have to start resetting areas and bringing people back, which could hamper their ability to escape. So they made it into the boats, and they skipped a whole room I created, which was a bummer. This was a part of Crafting Annihilation. Those of you that were here for crafting last week, I set up Zopal, who is the venom distillery, like poisoner person. I was going to roleplay them as kind of an eccentric scientist, and a bunch of like zombies as his lab assistants, and they're all harvesting mushrooms to make better poisons. I had a whole thing in here that was going to be basically a social encounter with some added environmental effects. You can see I actually threw a bunch of mushrooms on here to add to the effect. I had a whole like dialogue set up. Obviously, that could have been a fight, and the player skipped it completely. I understand why they did it, because as I mentioned earlier, I think their mindset was, we need to try to sync back up with the rest of the party as quickly as possible, which is not a bad way to go about it. So on the one hand, I see why they did that. On the other hand, it was kind of a bummer they skipped this, because I did think it was going to be a kind of a fun social encounter that could have led to combat or could have led to something else, but I was willing to kind of play around with it. And I even teased it by like showing the players like, hey, here's what you see. Because initially I was going to wait for them to disembark before I actually gave them the description of like a pureblood with a bunch of zombies harvesting and inspecting mushrooms. Instead, like when they got close, I just gave them that description just to see if they would take the bait and land and check it out. But instead, not so much. They decided to skip it. They poked holes in the boat, which I think that means the boat is now gone. Zopal is stranded. I'll have to decide whether or not I want that to be a thing. So obviously an hour has gone by since they went by, because they did short rest. So is Zopal still in there harvesting mushrooms, or did he come back out? That'd be kind of funny if I had them like, instead of hand waving their escape, I at least show him by the riverbank going like, the fuck, our boat's gone. And he's like shaking his fist at people or something. First, this was something I decided to telegraph pretty easily, because I was worried the players would think that this door was the entrance to the throne room and try to start exploring in here, which wouldn't be bad for them to start exploring. It would give a chance to use, unused pieces of the dungeon. But again, I think their mindset was specifically, we want to get to the throne room as quickly as possible and get back and join the party back up. So in that case, I did telegraph through Cody that like, hey, this is the barracks. And I just had a funny moment where it's like people are getting it on in there, because I figure most people would attend the ritual unless they had a specific reason not to. And one of those would be if you were having like a secret tryst or something in the barracks. So the party decided to not open the door and jack around with things. Again, this was going to be just basically a social encounter. I wasn't interested in throwing a bunch of, extra combat, knowing that we had just fought those brood guards and knowing that I had a delicious combat encounter coming up, which was the Hydra. So this was my first time using a Hydra. It wasn't terribly impressive. The problem is D&D, and maybe 5th edition specifically, no single creature is ever going to shine. You really need to have multiple monsters, because the action economy will screw you over every time. Maybe if you've got one that's super, super powerful and has legendary actions, that can help even the playing field. But with a single creature, it's never going to go over too terribly well, especially one that is not intelligent and not really going to use tactics to the fully, which is what happened here. I was expecting this to be a very difficult fight, even with the split party and the reduced numbers, but I definitely didn't quite have the numbers on my side. I believe there was one round I was rolling, look at these, 13, 11, that shit's not going to hit anybody, 10. So out of 5 attacks, I hit twice in like this one round. And in fact, Kales used shield via Zendala on one of them. So out of 5 attacks, I only hit 1 player. That kind of sucks, because that's their big thing, is a Hydra just gets so many extra attacks. Here's another example. 5 attacks, 1 of them hit. So the dice just weren't quite with me. He's got a +8 also, which is a bummer. But yeah, I just wasn't rolling very well with the Hydra. And Theron had the excellent strategy of casting Flaming Sphere at 4th level, which means, assuming we played this correctly, and I think we did, every turn on his turn, he can use a bonus action to re-deal that damage. I still get a dex save, but the Hydra is not very dexterous, so I think I don't know what his DC is, but I think I actually, I think I maybe averaged actually fails and successes pretty evenly. But 46 is pretty damning. And I was never able to break his concentration. He nailed his concentration saves, which he does have a +7. So, that was my only thing I could do with it. And then, in addition to every turn in his bonus action, I believe every time the Hydra ended its turn next to the Flaming Sphere, which it pretty much had to because there was nowhere to go, it also took that same damage and had to make another dex save. So it was like 2 46s per round of fire damage. And the fire damage completely shuts down the Hydra's main ability, which is that it can regenerate heads, gain more heads, and actually regenerate some of its hit points. So pretty much after, because I think round 1, he actually used his turn to cast underwater breathing, which I didn't think about this. I was just playing the Hydra straight up, but I guess I could have maybe tried to, I don't know, grapple somebody in its head, in its mouth, and then drag them underwater. There's not a good, a lot of monsters have rules for grappling people with their attacks. And in this case, the bite doesn't really, a lot of bites have like that extra restrain ability, and this one didn't. So I guess I could have foregoed one of its attacks to make a grapple check and try to shove it underwater. Just to, knowing that me as the DM metagaming, knowing that it wouldn't do anything because they cast that water breathing. But the Hydra doesn't know that. Hydra's just a freaking monster. So I probably should have done that for at least one attack just to showcase that, like, hey, Theron did a good job of letting everybody breathe underwater. But oh well, I just straight up did a bunch of attacks and they weren't terribly effective. I mean, I did some damage. The Hydra also, I figured, with all the different people, I was just spreading that attack out. So like everybody got a damage. So nobody even got to like 50% hit points because I was literally like, you get a bite attack, you get a bite attack, you get a bite attack. So it wasn't too damaging between that and the Brood Guards. Honestly, it wasn't terribly difficult for the party. And although enough to where they did short rest, which helped me better sync up our time. Because, again, that other one was supposed to take place over several hours. So now we can say, okay, now it's ended. You guys finished your short rest. You battled the Hydra during the biggest moments of the ritual so that there wasn't a time issue or anything, even though there's tidal waves and all this shit happening right here. But I figure, okay, most of these people were in the ritual or listening to the ritual and not paying attention to what was going on in the river. So that was the reason for that. And then the one thing I did do to sync back up, I had Fenthaza tell, knowing now that the player or the other party was going along the river, I told Fenthaza through Fenthaza to tell Mannix and Kales, hey, drag these bodies over and feed the Hydra, and that will get you into the throne room, and from there you can do what you want. And Mannix was even like, what do you expect me to do, lady? And at that point, you probably noticed I was a little bit exasperated with Chris to how much the players seem to want me to hold their hand in this dungeon. And I was like, I thought you were smarter than this, Mr. Mannix. Figure it out. Do reconnaissance or assassinate him or talk to him or kill him or do whatever you want. I'm giving you as many options as I can. And then he was like, oh, yeah, okay. But I literally had a moment of just exasperation where I was like, look, how much do you want me to tell you exactly what to do? I want you guys to be able to come up with your own plans. And they never quite seem to be able to do that. They're just kind of like, well, I guess we need to just get to the throne room and get to Rosnisi. So I've tried to work with that to the best ability I can and offer them a bunch of reactions to things going on, like guard patrols coming by and Cody, joining their party temporarily and all these different things, knowing that they really haven't had a good, okay, you're going to do this, I'm going to do this kind of a plan. So that part's been a little admittedly frustrating for me, but I've been attempting to work with the party to the best of my ability, at least. And it seems like at this point, I think they're kind of done with this dungeon. The idea of it, of the concept of having to sneak around and do the occasional social encounter. At this point, the other half of the party is now having to fight their way through the dungeon, at least through the river part of it. And Mannix has gotten his ritual and transformed into a UNT. So I feel like I've also might have gotten what I want out of this dungeon as well, which I think is why the party is like, okay, and they just made this decision on their own. They're like, okay, we're just going to do this now. We're going to like do our big ambush attack on this room and then move into Rosnisi's chamber now that Mannix has found it, which I guess, I don't know. That is a choice they can make. I hope I didn't force them into that because that was not my, not where I necessarily wanted them to go. I didn't want to say, okay, now's your chance. Like, now's your one chance to fight your way into this room. That wasn't my idea when I had them get here. My idea was just to like, okay, I'm going to let you guys sync up and literally have a chance to meet up. And then from there, whatever you guys want to do, you can do a social encounter, you can do a stealth encounter, like however you want to do. You could just look around, note where the secret door is, and then say, okay, you guys wait here till nightfall, or, do something, whatever you all want to do. I'm willing to work with that, to the extent that I can't just tell the players that. And instead, they decided to just kind of, okay, we're going to launch our attack here, which, okay, if that's what they want to do, that's where they're going. To the extent that I have to decide, like, exactly the sequence of events, because we ended the session with Theron literally popping out of the water. I like the initial thing about like him dragging the water, the body underwater and trying to like make it like the Hydra's here. Even though everybody else is pretty suspicious, like, well, wait, we usually see the fucking Hydra. Like, why is it just dragging things underwater? I liked Theron trying to grab her and drag her underwater, even though she is like the least dangerous person in this room combat-wise, and it seems to be the one they want to try to take out. And I feel like that was a good social encounter. So I did put Salida, I forgot to mention, I put Salida in here as a fun callback to the events of Oralunga. And the fact that she recognized Mannix and Kaless, and Mannix was able to basically convince her, like, yeah, I joined you guys. I betrayed my party and became UNT, and he did. So that's not even up for question. Although I think I did have him roll a deception check to basically lower her suspicions. But no, I had to roll a deception check to go down here and check the body. That's right. To convince her to like check it out, which she did. Theron, you can see right here was the last thing we did, rolled a strength check, and I gave him advantage. He rolled a 13 because he's popping out in the water as she leans over. She resisted, so she knows a dwarf just popped out of the water. Kaless attempted to stealth her way over here, but also rolled a 2, which gave her a 13, which is technically enough to stealth against the brood guards, but not against... I know it's not good enough for Sekalok. It's actually good enough for this guy, too. This is just one of the random snakehead dudes. So we could do a surprise round, because immediately with this dwarf appearing, obviously that's going to set everybody up to go on alert. But I still need to have other people do things with their surprise round. So Mannix said he was going to attempt to shove Salida. So I need to decide if I want to have him just do another contested strength check, or maybe I will have her roll another strength check. Well, and give her disadvantage on, because the problem is I already gave Theron advantage. So that's what the easy solution would be, is if he shoved her right when Theron grabs her, because I think that's what he said he was going to do. That would give him advantage, but I already gave him advantage. So maybe I could just say, well, I haven't decided on that, because I think I already gave him advantage before he even said he was going to shove her in. So the point is, I need to come up with a rule for that, and then I need to have Gillian, George, and Zendala, assume they leave Cody behind in the boat here, do something with the surprise round. And Kaless currently is stealthing, and I would give her a surprise round, but not with Sekalok, at least. Like, she stealthed, and she made a 13, but that's actually good enough to beat some of these guys. So if we did a surprise round, it would have to include this guy. He would not be surprised by this. He's more I'm trying to work out like how this works when like some of the party stealthed and the other part did, or maybe there's not a surprise round because so the surprise round is some of them already did a thing. Theron is trying to grab her, failed. Mannix is trying to push her in. Maybe I'll just let them do another strength contested check. So that's their surprise round. I would probably still give Kaless a surprise round, as well as Sekalok and Gillian and George if they want to do anything, and Zendala. So they will get a surprise round here. They should get one. But then after that, everybody will act normally. And this is no pushover fight here. Sekalok here looks like a pureblood, but he's a fucking champion, which is a CR 9. CR 9. He is stronger than the Hydra. And that is hilarious whenever these kind of stat blocks are used, because obviously no player knows that this dude is so fucking... I mean, I tried to like describe him as this fucking just big, beefy Conan looking guy. But it's impossible for me to literally tell the players, oh, by the way, this one just dude here who's Rosnisi's bodyguard is the like actual boss of this dungeon, and he about to come for you. He has basically legendary resistance. He can reroll a failed saving throw. He has second wind. He can regain 20 hit points during a fight. He has the UNT magic resistance. He also has the UNT spells, but that seems like a waste of his excellent actions because he can make 3 attacks with a greatsword or a short bow, which averages 19 damage a hit. He's got a +9, and he deals a bonus 2d6 slashing damage if he has more than half of his hit points remaining. He also has an armor class of 18 and average hit points of 143. Holy crap. The players are not going to realize until this guy starts swinging his sword. They're like, oh shit, this guy is doing a fuck ton of damage. And I'm excited to see how this plays out because I think they are just woefully unprepared for how strong this guy is. And I do not plan on holding back here because the players just destroyed my Hydra, which was they probably thought was the real boss. And they're probably feeling pretty good. I also feel like they're doing well. I mean, they just short rested. They've got hit points. For some reason, Theron didn't roll much hit points. But I also feel like they still have a lot of spells. That's usually my good indication of, where the party's resources at. Theron is out of 3rd level spell slots. Oh, did he cast? I thought he cast Flaming Sphere at 4th level. Theron, you didn't deduct your sheet properly. I can't actually see that here. Is that right? If it's a 46 at Flaming Sphere, yeah, Conjuration 4. So I'm gonna. Oh no, he did. Never mind. It's 2 out of 1. He has 2 4th level spell slots. Okay. He still has 1 4th level spell slot, 4 level 1s, and 3 level 2s. And then Gillian probably has a shit ton because her bagpipes give her free spells. Gillian, I'm gonna kind of jack with your spell a second. Wait, how is this? Why are your things big? Yeah, Gillian still has most of her spell slots as well, and 2 of her 4th level spells. So I'm not holding back at all. Like the players are still doing real well, and they have just no idea what they're in for. But they are getting a surprise round here. They can probably take Selita out of this fight, assuming somebody wants to just wrestle her underwater. She can't breathe underwater, and the players currently can breathe underwater. I believe. Well, can they? How long does that spell last? What did he cast? Because they did short rest. Let's see. Water breathe. Oh, 24 hours. Damn. Okay. Never mind. They're still definitely breathing underwater. So yeah, if anything, if somebody rolls a good strength check, but you'd have to roll it every round because she would be able to try to escape it. You could effectively keep her underwater. And then I think I would have her roll the same water breathing rolls, which is depending on what her con score is, she might actually fall unconscious, which is a terribly dark way of taking somebody out, but essentially drowning them. For our rules for drowning, it's a really messed up way of taking somebody out. Why is it not? There you go. I changed them. I don't think we've actually used them yet. We changed them at some point during Prince of the Apocalypse. I just don't think they've ever actually come up. Suffocation. If you're under duress, such as the middle of combat, You were considered out of breath and choking. At that point, you can survive a number of rounds equal to your con modifier, minimum 1 round. Her con is 0. So she would literally survive 1 round, 1 full round underwater. So she would get 1 chance to basically, assuming they kept her underwater, she would get 1 chance to roll an escape strength roll. And if she doesn't, then at the start of her next turn, she would drop to 0 hit points. So assuming they are successful, and I'm thinking I will let Mannix as hit. So Theron basically failed his tactic of trying to jump up and grab her and pull her under. Mannix could succeed in pushing her into the water. Or maybe I could argue whether he pushes her into I don't know. We'll have to figure out depending on we'll see what Mannix wants to do next turn, or next tomorrow. But that could be a tactic they could do for sure. Otherwise, the rest of them are gonna have to deal with 2 Brood Guards, Sekalok, and a UNT Malison. And I even telegraphed the fact that there are 4 ghouls waiting in the wings here. Ghouls are obviously cannon fodder for our heroes now. But again, the cool thing about having multiple enemies is that immediately swings the action economy back in my favor. So having all these enemies and the players know they're here. Stop giving people sight. I hate that. Definitely makes things a little more challenging for our party. So the ghouls will enter that fight for sure because they're designed, I think. Where does it say? There are 4 ghouls. Hidden behind the throne are 4 ghouls that obey Rosnisi's commands. So it doesn't necessarily say they're activated, but I would imagine I might wait a round before they're activated. Maybe if Sekalok doesn't get a because he's in the surprise round, so maybe I will have them join the fight. I mean, the players don't know the difference. They're just the fucking ghouls can just be guards. They're just activated in case of emergency. The other thing is I wait and activate them until they open the door, but that seems very anticlimactic to have this fight cleaned up, and they already know the ghouls are there anyway. So yeah, I probably need to have them enter this fight. I need to roll hit points for everything in this room, I think. Although it looks like I already rolled it for the Brood Guards. They've got 2 different hit points. Let's go GR 5d8 for our ghouls. Ooh, that's a big ghoul. 30. That's an above average ghoul. 24. That's an above average ghoul. 26. That's an above average ghoul. 24. I like where this is going. Of course, I remember I rolled really well for those Brood Guards last week, and they folded like a house of cards. And unfortunately, since we did short rest, Theron does have all his wild shapes back. 26. Kind of hoping he would transform into like a water creature and do that aspect of it. A crocodile or something. 24. All right. I need to roll for this one Malison who's going to be armed with a bow from afar. This is going to be great. I'm going to have melee. I'm going to have backline. I could have somebody cast Suggestion, which is probably a good thing to cast on Kaless because I think Wisdom is one of her few weaknesses. She's got a +2 to Wisdom. So that should go over pretty well. I could suggest somebody like, I don't know, run into the water or just anywhere, just leave. Let's see, what was your... Probably this guy used Suggestion. I think using it with Sekalok would be a huge waste of his turns. GR 12d8 plus 12 for our Malison. 57. That swings back the other way. A little bit weaker than the average Malison. But he's got the range attack. And now Sekalok. So my rule for rolling hit points on named enemies and bosses is that I keep rolling until I get average or above. I don't allow myself to get less than average hit points on big named boss fights. So his average is 143. 22d8 plus 44. Ha! Wow! Straight up average. All right. There's the lowest roll I could have rolled with my rules. Alas, Sekalok. You'll be fine with 143, I think, though. That 18 armor class is going to make a huge deal. And the fact that he can resist spells, which I have to remember, and he can reroll failed saves, which is going to be really helpful if somebody like Gillian tries to cast like Polymorph on him or something. Because unfortunately, his mental stats are easily exploitable. Wisdom and intelligence. Dex also is only a +2, but if somebody rolls a con against him, he's got a +6. Strength +5. I'm really excited to use this guy. How does that appear if... Let's see, does it roll all this damage? I need to test this out in Roll20 first. Let's say, always Whisper rolls. How does it look like? So it shows up just as the attack, and it says +7 2d6 slashing damage. So if I click this... Why? Okay, so is it just saying that the extra is only if it has more? I need to put that in Roll20 better then. Let's see. Because it's confusing the way it looks right there, and I don't want to sow any confusion during battle. Let's see, where would... Whoops, that's the player's handbook. Where's the monster manual? Where is my champion? And this will basically be the big climax of this dungeon, because when they open the door to get to Rosnisi, they probably think it's going to be an even bigger boss fight, but it's not. It's totally just a social encounter. I guess they could kill Rosnisi if they wanted to, but he's not going to put up... It's definitely not going to be near... For the same reason of the action economy, it's just not going to be a big fight, and he's basically going to surrender to them. Although, well, he won't surrender. He will fight if they want to fight. Where is champion? I'm not seeing champion. Is champion not under... Is champion not in the monster manual? Interesting. Oh, yeah. See Appendix D. I'll be damned. They added that in... Well, maybe that's in, like, Volos or something. But it is in Tomb of Annihilation, apparently. Champion. Yeah, so it's just the one... Okay, so I'm going to reword this. Actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to create just a whole new one that says... like, if half hit points or more. I think that would be the easier thing to do. So, interestingly, he's got a way worse chance to hit with a short bow because his dex is lower. So let's just add a separate attack of Great Sword. I'll make this one... you know what? Let's hide the description and say if more than half hit points. What is half of 143? 70 something. 143. 71.5. So let's just write down if more than 71 hit points. That'll be a note to me. Then he does this extra damage. So he does 2d6 plus 5 plus an extra 2d6, which is basically like auto crit if he has more than half his hit points. Can I just call this Greatsword also? And then we're just going to have this one be 5 feet to hit 9. 1 target, and that's just going to be the 2d6 plus 5. Okay. So now if I click this, it's just his attack, which that was a terrible roll. Okay, that looks a lot better. I'll just have to remember, looking at his character sheet, that whenever he gets weaker, which that's a really rare case of a monster actually becoming weaker as you attack them. I guess you need to do the same for the short bow as well. So let's hide this. more than 71 hit points. We'll add the short bow attack, which is range 8320 to hit 6. One target, and that is a 1d6 plus 2 piercing damage. I didn't select the damage on the other one, did I? So that is if he's got less. Is slashing. Okay. So that makes more sense from a Roll20 point of view, is just not entering all that shit in there and just show everything. So does it? Can I actually? Yes, I can click on these things. Rerolls a failed saving throw. Indomitable. The bummer is that also shows, hey, you can only use it twice. There's no way for me to hide that because it always just shows what's being written. So if I want to make a note to myself, I'd have to put it like somewhere else. But maybe that's part of the Roll20 thing, as you end up kind of just showing your cards more often. I have to remember to use this guy to his advantage, though. So he's got advantage on spells and other effects. He can also reroll failed saving throws twice. And at some point, as a bonus action, probably whenever he's near like half health or something, he can just regain 20 hit points straight up, which is pretty awesome. Other than that, he will just be fucking breaking into guys. Which I assume the best strategy for them would be for... the best strategy is to try to lock him down, although he's got a great chance of not being locked down because he's got advantage and can reroll fail. But that doesn't necessarily mean he auto-succeeds. So if Gillian can get off like a hypnotic pattern or something, Theron will probably morph into an Allosaurus again and take most of the tanking. But hopefully with all of these various enemies, that will still be very difficult for the players. So I'm thinking the surprise round, Mannix and Theron have already done their thing during the surprise round. So the only other ones that get to act would be Kaless, Sekalok, Gillian, George, and Zendala can all choose what they want to do. At the moment that Theron and Mannix basically do this thing to Salida, I will ask the other players, do you guys want to be doing anything during this, initial surprise round? And we'll see what they can do. What is their line of sight from here? Oh boy, they can't really see, so they're going to have to move up and be like, oh, there's actually some dudes in here. And yeah, the interesting thing is I'm not putting the ghouls on the board yet until it's their turn, as a way to try to telegraph the fact that nobody else can really see them very well, even though Mannix did. I told them about the ghouls because he rolled like a really good damn perception check. Oh, I need to put him back on non-whisper mode, don't I? So he's aware of that. But that didn't stop them from launching their attack. So this is going to be a big fight. It's going to be the two brood guards, one Malison, who's probably going to stand back with his bow, because I think that's generally pretty useful for him to do. Or I'm probably going to try to at least get one suggestion off on Kaless. That would actually be, if I can shut her down, that would be pretty effective. Sekalog's just going to barrel into somebody, probably start slicing up Kaless pretty bad, and she's going to be like, oh shit. And then the ghouls will wake up. Probably go ahead and have them wake up that first round, because Sekalog will be activated during the surprise round. So he can basically sound the alarm, at least in this room. What would be interesting is if during the Brood Guard's turn, I want one of them to run like this way and start would gather more people, and that might freak the players out and be like, oh shit, we need to run after that and keep other UNT from showing up, which I probably will. That's probably a good use of their of at least one of their turns, is just having them run over to this door. Maybe not have them open the door yet, give the players a chance to lock him down somehow. But yeah, that could be pretty nuts, in which case I'll need to set this room up that could make things go real fucking bad real quick though. If a brood guard opens this door and says like we're under attack, like how many people in this fucking room are just gonna rush at the players? They're just gonna be boned pretty bad. So I need to be cognizant that I don't necessarily want to. I don't necessarily go through with it because I think it would mess things up pretty bad. But I do want to create that heightened sense of oh shit, we need to actually like while we're fighting this fight, we need to try to keep it contained and only not allow any other not allow the entire dungeon to be alerted essentially, and that is a thing. Which hopefully that also dictates the players can't use like, call lightning or something huge, which I think she has to do that once per long rest. So I don't think she can actually do that again. She used that and tidal wave by now. So I think she's already used the big ones, but certainly like you got to be very aware of the fact that you are in a fight right now, but you cannot allow the rest of the dungeon to really know you're in the middle of a fight because if I let any of these other, I guess Fenthaza is kind of on the player's side, but I don't know. How would she react to, is she even still here? Like she just told them to go, like how much time has elapsed? Probably just minutes, maybe 10 or 15 minutes at the most. So yeah, maybe she's actually teleported away. And it's just kind of, the rest of the people are starting to file into, various areas. So there would be a few like armed guard. It wouldn't be like the entire, force of this place show up, but there would certainly be, probably another 2 brood guards and like Malisons. And maybe it looks like I already rolled hit points for all these guys in the middle. So maybe have a lot of those ones join the fight. That could be pretty interesting. Frightened the ghouls. Yeah, that's always funny when you do like a fear spell in the middle of a dungeon. Like, oh wait, we actually don't want you to run that way. It's gonna get us in a lot of trouble. I suspect this fight will take up the majority of tomorrow's session, even though we just had a pretty combat heavy last session. I wasn't expecting the players to start a fight here, but that's where we are. And because of how powerful Sekalok is, and that there are several enemies here, I think it is going to take a while. And if the Broodguard actually manages to warn others, that's going to add more enemies in here. The players might have to fucking retreat. Like if it gets too hairy, we'll have to see. And in which case, I don't know what they're going to do because then the defenses would be doubled up and just all kinds of problems would happen. And then maybe we're in the dungeon for a little bit longer because then Fenthaza really does have to like work with them to cause a bigger distraction. Otherwise, assuming the players' plans go off without a hitch, they can defeat all the forces in here, which I think everybody in here would generally fight to the death. Selita would probably surrender because that's she's loyal to Rosnisi, but she wants to keep her life. Sekalok, I think, honor-wise, and I picture him as just this big, tough, charismatic. I don't see him running from. I don't know. I'll have to figure that out. The Brood Guards would obviously fight to the death. The Malison probably would. Ghouls obviously would fight to the death. I think Sekalok might. The only thing he would do would be to retreat into Rosnisi's chambers, which could be interesting. Yeah. And obviously if the players retreat, that'd be a fun thing where Sekalok could get a chance to also recuperate. The only reason I'm worried about the players, and 90% of the time when I worry about the players, it's completely unfounded. The players just kick my ass left and right. But they have no idea what they're up against. And they've never fought just a dude, and let's face it, he's just a dude who's a goddamn CR9, 3 multi-hit plus 9 to hit, resistance to magic, redo failed saving throws, just fucking beast of a dude with 18 armor class. Like, they're just not at all prepared. I wouldn't be. If I was a player, I'd just be like, all right, well, this guy's going to be a little stronger. But, you picture, maybe at worst, you picture that one guy in the pirate den, which was their last big harrowing fight, I think. Like, not even the Dragon of the Steel Predator had them to where I was like, fuck, are they going to survive this fight? Which was that big pirate dust up in Jahaka Anchorage, because for a similar reason, they didn't know that the one like first mate half work was I think it was a gladiator stat block, which is CR5. and they were just unprepared for how strong that guy was. And this is a very similar situation. There's a lot less NPCs here, but it's a similar situation where they're just unprepared for how strong this one guy is. So it'll be interesting. Or, maybe the dice will not go in my favor and it's all for nothing. But certainly retreat is an option. They've got the river. They can all breathe underwater for the next 24 hours. So retreat is a viable tactic for them to get away. Like they literally fought their way here. They could easily retreat down into the river, but that would create some extra situations that I'm going to have to come up with, some contingencies where if this fight goes sour and they have to retreat, now suddenly the entire dungeon is going to be alerted to the fact that they're in here. Are they going to retreat in short rest, in which case the UNT might try to send some forces after them? Are they going to try to go into that fungus cavern and meet Zopal now at this point? That could be funny. All these different things could occur depending on how this fight goes. I'm going to assume, I will have some plans in case things go badly, but I'm going to assume the players do win this fight and keep it self-contained. They should find out as landing hits, you're right. If they and then end up trying to attack with like a 16 or 17, it doesn't hit. And then, as soon as he starts landing hits and he gets 3 attacks and does, 19 damage a hit, I think? He did 18 right here, and I rolled pretty badly. So, what is the average on that? He's got a +9 to hit. He averages 19 damage every hit, and he can do it 3 times. That's pretty fucking nuts. That's basically like George at that point. He doesn't have like the action surge or anything like that, but yeah, he's pretty fucking strong. He also got like twice George's hit points, I think, almost. So yeah, pretty nasty. He's actually like a PC basically, which is really strong. PCs are incredibly strong, way stronger than their equivalent monsters. Once you get to these higher levels in tier 1, that can be a little different, but I vehemently disagree with the notion that like this CR level is designed for like this party of heroes, like by themselves. Like that never works out to that degree. So yeah, most monsters, I think their CR level is way too high in general. Assuming you want to have like a challenging fight. So yeah, I think it's going to be a very, very difficult fight for the party. Probably I anticipate this to be one of the most difficult fights they've ever had, honestly. Like we just fought that Hydra and everybody's like, oh, that wasn't too bad. Now you're fucking in for it. But they are, in good shape too. Even though they're at like the end of this dungeon, because they've stealthed and socialized their way through it, most of them have all of their spell slots, and generally pretty high hit points. So in terms of their resources, they've got that on their side big time. So assuming they win all that, then the Rosnisi thing is going to be a total social encounter. They can fight him if they want, and he will fight to defend himself if they want to kill him. But for the most part, he's going to want to just chat. He's going to be like, you made it this far. I know you're very powerful. You defeated my champion. I'm basically... actually, if they want to fight him, he will try and spend his action to... because it says he can cause shields to fly off the walls and revolve around him. I might also include some flying swords. And then on his next turn, maybe have him just run into this circle and teleport away. Because he's got a fucking escape plan. I don't even have to do a bullshit DM thing about you drop smoke and he's gone. He's got a fucking arcane circle right here. He can teleport anywhere in the dungeon. So if they do decide to fight him, he can do that, which would be a pretty big, and the player's like, oh shit. But if they want to socialize with him, then he will just chat and basically admit, hey, the reason I sent agents to Oralunga, which you defeated, was because I wanted to try to find out why I'm dying. Like, what is this whole death curse that seemingly hit? I don't know how much the UNT know about the death curse or not. I guess, they have people die, so it would be affecting them as well. In fact, I guess the dead, well, I haven't come up with the exact timing of that. It's kind of like plot device with like Walking Dead and other things. It's like how soon before the dead become zombies? Because I could have played around with that, with the people who died in the pool become zombies. But I haven't determined the exact timing. The timing is just whenever it's plot convenient, honestly. But I think the UNT are generally aware of the death curse. They're just not aware of the fact that why Rosnisi is dying, and they're definitely not aware that it's all Asarak's fault. It's the Soulmonger is actually sucking things into that tomb. So Rosnisi is in real bad shape. He's dying. Trying to read his notes on here. It says Rosnisi slowly rotting to death. He doesn't know the cause of his affliction and has no way to cure it. So they haven't put two and two together. I think they still know about the death curse because of the way I've done it in my game. Is that the death curse literally manifests as like a zombie apocalypse? So obviously that would affect them as well. But they haven't put two and two together because they probably don't have the means to raise their own dead. So they don't know why Rosnisi is dying because he has been raised from the dead before. Well, and the fact that actually the better reason is because he's a fucking like immortal guardian of Mesro, or at least was, and he still has like that maybe ability or something. So he's like super ancient. He's like centuries old, and because of that, now that the death curse is in effect, it's like all that borrowed time is catching up to him. So he's just dying for that. He's like reaching his normal age that he should be. So that's his problem. But he doesn't know that it's Asarak's fault in the tomb. So what he will reveal is, he'll have the cube and he'll basically tell the play and he'll ask the players like, I want to have a very careful dialogue session where I want the players to be able to work with Rosnisi to an extent, although they shouldn't have to also. They could just try to beat him up and fight him if they want to. So I will have a combat encounter prepped, maybe some like flying swords or something just to make his escape a little more dramatic. But ultimately, the players will get the puzzle cube from him, whether they pry it from his dead hands or if he escapes, they will still be able to get the cube. We'll have the cube just near him or something. I won't have him take the cube with him. He will, I could have him escape, but the players will still acquire the cube, which is what they're there for. But he will explain that, Asarak promised, when he did this, carved out this tomb and everything. What is the timeline of that? Did the UNT come first or did Asarak come first to Omu? I need to figure that out too. I'm not sure which was here first. If there's a timeline I can look up of events. But at some point, they garnered a deal with the UNT that the UNT would help guard the entrance to the tomb against any would-be interlopers. And in return, Asarak has promised the UNT the what's it called? What is it called? It's a crown. It's one of the spiffy like artifact things found in the dungeon. Although I don't even think it has stats. I think it's just supposed to be this super rare magical thing. Fabled treasures, the Black Opal Crown. Fanthaza mentioned it. And I don't think it comes with stats, right? I think it's just, which I could give it stats. That'd be pretty cool. Especially if it's like a UNT specifically. I could come up with a really interesting post-game or even sequel if Manix as a UNT ends up getting like seduced by the Black Opal Crown and wanting to bring forth Dendar, the Night Serpent. Yeah, it doesn't actually have a stat block, it looks like. Ring of Winter does. So he wants the Black Opal Crown, but he doesn't know that what Asarak's doing with the Soulmonger is killing him. And obviously he doesn't want to die. So he would say, if the players can somehow tell Rosnisi, this is what I'm getting at. I want the players to tell Rosnisi, well, you're dying because of the Soulmonger. So I might just go ahead and tell them the fact that, hey, you would know that, the Soulmonger, not only does it raise people up, but it is affecting those who are have been raised from the dead or maybe have been, immortalized for some reason. That the death curse would affect them as well. So if the players don't quite get that, I will just tell them that information based on what they have learned through this campaign. And then they can choose to share that information with Rosnisi or not. If they do, Rosnisi would be like, oh shit, well, here's the cube. Go in there, kick Asarak's ass, do it as quickly as possible because I'm dying, and bring me the Black Opal Crown, and I will reward you greatly. Especially because Manix is a UNT, so he should appeal to Manix especially. So we'll see if the players care, but that is going to be It's designed as a social encounter, but I will have a combat encounter ready. I don't think Rosnisi's actually that strong, especially after that fight with Sekalok. But he's got he's got bracers of defense. He's actually got some loot on him though, doesn't he? He's got bracers of defense, and he's got a flame tongue longsword. He's got all the UNT stuff. He's a spellcaster. He can cast like polymorph, animate dead, counterspell, fireball, create undead. Ooh, he could cast a Giaz on somebody. How does that work? 30 days. Waste a magical command on creature you can see within range. Forcing it to carry out some... Ooh, I could cast a Giaz on... Is it Giaz or Giaz? I don't actually know. Must succeed on a wisdom saving throw, become charmed by you for the duration. While the creature is charmed by you, it takes 5d10 psychic damage each time it acts in a manner directly counter to your instructions, but no more than once per day. You can issue any command you choose. That'd be pretty cool. So he could literally cast a Giaz on Manix specifically as a UNT. Although Manix does get a wisdom saving throw. But I might give him like disadvantage or something because he's a UNT on the save. But that would be interesting. I could actually like kind of command him to retrieve the Black Opal Crown for Rosnisi specifically as this like extra, assuming the social encounter goes according to plan, as this like extra thing. And then if the players are like, oh, wait a minute, fuck you, you're actually casting a spell, and then they decide to open up combat, then I'll have to go with my combat plan, which I believe, and yeah, it does cost a bonus action to do the shields. The shields add plus 10 to his AC. That's actually significant because he's got, what, 15? So you have a 25 AC. That's kind of hilarious. If an attack would normally hit Rosnisi is blocked by the shields, one of the shields is struck and disabled, reducing his bonus by 2. So you actually can lower it. Only Rosnisi can activate the shields. Sarek had about a century to build a tomb. Okay, so Sarek's been there first. I guess he just hasn't done the Soulmonger. Well, I mean, but how long has the UNT been here? Like, when did they move in? I guess not a century ago. So the UNT moved in. Sarek approached them and said, "Hey, you can stay here. That's totally cool, but you gotta keep everybody out. You're gonna be the guardians of this place. And in return, I will, once my thing I'm doing here is complete, and he's not gonna, tell them about the soulmonger or anything, then I will reward you with this Black Opal Crown, which the UNT believe will free Dendar the Night Serpent." So that was the plan, but obviously, since Rosnisi is dying from Sarek's plan, he would be on board with the players actually going in and just saying, "Hey, you guys go in and get me the Black Opal Crown, stop a Sarek, and then we all win." So that would be Rosnisi's plan. And if the players want to fight him, then he will summon. I guess I could turn into a fight for a little bit, the shield. He's not going to last long with just him is the problem. I'll throw some flying swords in there, but ultimately, if he gets attacked in this room, knowing the party just defeated his champion and everything else, he's going to have to retreat. Now, the interesting thing is I'm not going to let the party even short rest after this fight, and they're going to be hurting. But I'm going to straight up telegraph the fact that, you guys have defeated here, but if you wait an hour, like somebody's going to come in this throne room. This throne room seems people come in and out all the time. Unless they do something really clever, like try to keep people alive and acting as like sentries and keep people out. Like maybe they might be able to come up with some way they can short rest, but normally they would not be able to just camp out here and short rest because that will set the, people will come and go into this throne room and notice things are fucked up. So that might put some pressure on them in the Rosnisi fight if they're all fucked up from that fight. But just Rosnisi alone, I don't expect, even with some flying swords or something, I don't expect him to be able to do much of anything in this fight combat-wise, which is why I'm hoping to do a social encounter, especially after that big fight we just had. hoping to do a social encounter. And if all that goes according to plan, they get the cube. Whether or not they fight him or talk to him, whatever, they'll get the cube. They're pretty much done with this dungeon at that point. Like, they could examine this circle and realize they've seen it a few places before and use it to teleport. I think the only spots they've seen it were the throne room down there, the prison pit, and the ritual area. They don't know of any other circles that which I think that's pretty much all of them. They might be the harem, I think, is the only other one, which doesn't also put them in a good spot. Their best option is to exit the way they came down the river and then into that cave area, which I'll have to remind them of that. So, assuming we get through all of these things and everything goes off perfectly, this could be our last session in this dungeon. If they defeat this battle, they get the cube for Osnisi, and they escape, and I don't plan on having any events while they escape, which again, if they short rest, that puts them in a bind, because even if an hour goes by, the ritual is going to start dispersing, and everything else could start going back to normal in terms of guard patrols and stuff, and maybe they would notice things are afoot. Zopal's kind of screwed because they did poke holes in his boat, so that would be probably sunk by now. So I don't know if I necessarily want to hand wave their total escape, but on the one hand, any other combat encounter they have on the way out is going to kind of be anticlimactic because they just had all their big battles. They had the Hydra fight, they had the Sekalok fight, they might have had the Rosnisi fight. Narrative-wise, this doesn't quite make sense to throw any more last encounters on them. I'm kind of okay with them just making it out of here. But that will lead them to, which I'm going to have to prep this, an encounter with between Artis and Zendala, which once they escape, Zendala's going to want to long rest somewhere. They'll have to decide where they want to go. Maybe they would be welcome back in the Grung Shrine, which is probably where Artis would actually be. That would actually be interesting if they don't want a long rest, and they kind of force Zendala with them to do the encounter with Artis and Dragonbait. That would make her a lot weaker and her position a lot less powerful, even if she convinces some of the party members to help her. She is not at full strength, so she might actually refuse and try to escape from the players if they don't want a long rest before meeting with Artis, because she does not want to face him that early. So that'll be really interesting. It'll be a lot of social encounters, but that will be the culmination of Mannix's personal quest, which is dealing with Zendala / Artis and the Ring of Winter. And however the party wants to do that, I'm on board for it. My only worry is that it tears the party apart, because I think they all have different ideas of how to handle it. So I do like the moments when the DM can sit back and listen to the parties deliberate, but I definitely don't want to turn it into a big hurt feeling, because we're all at different alignments. Here's what all the different ways we feel like. So hopefully I don't have to step in and adjudicate any of that, but I'm hoping it turns into a fun story-based debate on what to do with Artis and Zendala and the Ring of Winter and all that. I am fully prepared if the party wants to. I know Kaless wants to get her hands on the Ring of Winter. And the ruling for that will be very tricky because it's a very powerful artifact, but every time you use it, you have to roll a save or the Ring of Winter will try and possess you, which I believe is in the rules. Let's see, is it actually included? Yeah. Because it is sentient. It is a chaotic evil item with an intelligence of 14. I believe that is smarter than Kaless. Wisdom of 14 and charisma of 17. Transmits emotions to creature carrying or wielding it. Has hearing and normal vision out to range of 60 feet. The ring craves destruction, and it likes inflicting indiscriminate harm on others. I am worried because I think that's a fun thing to roleplay, but you could also very easily tear your whole fucking party apart if somebody is possessed by the Ring of Winter and ends up actually harming them in different ways. So I'll have to be very careful with the ruling on this. But the way I was going to rule it, we'll talk about this next time on Crafting Annihilation as well, because we'll be getting closer to that. I think, is there rules for sentient items in the Dungeon Master's Guide also? because I was going to rule like allowing a saving throw. Basically, the reason Artist doesn't use the damn thing is because he knows that the ring tries to possess you and that it's super evil. And I was going to flavor that as like every time you use it, you're in danger of that possession. And what I haven't decided is what does that possession manifest as? Is it like a one-time use of like, okay, now you're just going to go nuts and cast this horrible spell on everybody? I don't necessarily want to take over a character or turn them evil or anything like that, because I think that's a very slippery slope that I don't necessarily want to go down. Let's see, simple sentient items. If a sentient item attempts to take control, actually found it, DMG 216. If a sentient item attempts to take control of its wielder, the wielder must make a charisma saving throw with oh, she's screwed if Celeste wants it. I don't think her charisma is very good. A DC equal to 12 plus the item's charisma modifier, which if you've got a 17, what are you if you've got a 17? Is that plus 3 or plus 4? I think that's plus 3. I think 17 means you've got a plus 3. Is that correct? I don't have any options. Let's see. If 10 and 11 is 0, 12 and 13 is 1, 14 and 15 is 2, 16 and 17 is 3. So yeah. So it'd be a DC 15 charisma save. Celeste has got a charisma of plus 1. While charmed, the wielder must try to follow the item's commands. If the wielder takes damage, it can it can repeat the saving throw, ending the effect on a success. So I would flavor that similarly to Manix's Berserk. Theron's Enraged thing, where the wielder will take control and immediately it would try to blast with one of its big like AoE destructive spells, no matter what. Depending on, I guess it depends on which one they just use. But I would have it go off. I mean, I could have it go off every turn or every day, but I think I would do that as every time it's used. Like you can quell it if you're not using it. Or maybe I can flavor it that Artist actually constantly makes this save. 12 charges, and I would force the user to use something like Freezing Sphere or Ice Storm or Cone of Cold, blasting her fellow party members. And it would do that every turn until she takes damage, in which case she can repeat the saving throw. So it would be a really crazy thing where she could use it once, but if she fails the save, she becomes this super dangerous entity until she makes that save. So just some thoughts I have on the ring in case somebody gets, because I know Celeste wants to get her hands on the ring because it is a powerful artifact. If Zendala actually gets her hands on the ring, that'll be an interesting thing. I actually don't have a plan for that because I assume the players don't want her to get the ring. But if she does get her hands on the ring, she will immediately probably try to use it to escape, I guess. So probably maybe create an ice creature. Because she would just want to escape the party. And then immediately it would try to make the thing. I could, if she gets her hand on, I could definitely showcase the fact that the ring like glows with this evil energy and her eyes glow. If she becomes possessed by it or something else. But yes, it is one of those powerful items in the world. Yep. I mean, I'll show this again, but they know like what it can do. Unfortunately, I did kind of tip my hand a bit on that. But yeah, it's very, very dangerous. Not necessarily something the players should want to get their hands on, but I don't mind giving them a super powerful item as long as it's got extreme consequences. And I think that would be a nice consequence. Because automatically, it's mainly just for its spell things, right? You don't age, which is nice, but how often does that actually come into play? You are immune to cold damage, which is very nice, but probably won't come into play in this campaign. It's mainly just the fact that you can cast all these spells. So my ruling would be if you try to cast any of these spells or effects, then you immediately have to make that save as the ring tries to possess you. Now it does say it can't do it until the next day. So if you make the save, suddenly now you can use the ring. And that is extremely powerful. But if you fail that, I mean, that's just a big saving throw. If you fail to save, then you're in trouble. All right. Well, we'll talk about that more during next week, because I think that's what we're going to cover is the whole artist. We'll also, so again, assuming tomorrow goes according to plan, we fight this battle in here, we meet Rosnisi, we get the cube, we leave the dungeon. And then the week after that would be, we're back in Omu, we deal with Artis and Zendala, and then we go to, Zagmira will contact them, tell them, meet us at the entrance to the tomb by the obelisk, and then we'll meet there and have a final showdown with Zagmira and the Red Wizards, who obviously want to turn on the players and take them out and take the cubes for themselves. So that will be a final battle and the culmination of Kalessa's personal quest, which is to deal with Zagmira. And then we will make it to the tomb. So bare minimum, we've got 2 more sessions until the Tomb of Annihilation itself. And at that point, we will level the party up to 9. But there could easily be a 3rd session in there or more, depending on, how things play out from here. So that is the plan. All right, I have gone way over my time, as occasionally does happen. So thank you all for joining me for Crafting Annihilation this week. Do check out patreon.com/RogueWatson if you want to support the channel. I will be here for Tomb of Annihilation tomorrow night and some more Invisible Ink during the afternoon tomorrow as well, streaming for that. See you guys tomorrow. Bye.